До свидания. Good morning, comrades. It is me, Robert Phoenix Shinky. You know, I can't believe this. There are people here in Fredericksburg that have been talking about our fluoride effort, our anti-fluoride effort, and said that we're actually working for the Russians. I have no idea where they would get that kind of idea. It's just it to me it boggles the mind. Like there's this rumor in town that that somehow we were funded by the Russians, and that we used all this Russian technology and all this Russian money in order to try to overthrow the water here in Fredericksburg. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I have no idea where they would actually even come up with that kind of concept or idea. It's mind boggling, absolutely mind boggling. But I guess that's what you have to deal with in a small town. These wild accusations and aspersions that just pop up out of nowhere. And small town minds, small town thinking. That's the way these things go sometimes. There was a lot of really interesting, weird shit. So today's show, by the way, obviously I'm joking. I am joking, but I did find this very fine Russian hat that I'm quite fond of at this point in time, and we'll be wearing it with frequency here in town as the weather gets colder, damper and colder, and it is, by the way, it's getting very cold and damp. And let's see. I hope Bolshevik's store is not required. Do I have Rosie's sleeping hat on your head? Oh, not quite. Not quite. What do we got going on here? It's a pat answer these days. The population of Fredericksburg is 10,000 people, but it has 3.5 million people coming through this town every single year. It has the most. Hold on a second. It has the most outrageous tourist to resident numbers on the planet. I'm serious. There are 300 people, I think it's 350 people that visit here, 350 tourists for every one citizen of Fredericksburg. It outpaces places like Venice and Cairo. It's really pretty significant. So 10,000 people. So today I kind of want to process a little bit more what happened. Yesterday I was pretty depressed, I have to say. I went to bed last night or the night before last thinking I didn't really want to, I mean, not that I had any suicidal tendencies, but I wasn't really looking forward to the morning. I have to say, it was like there was a part of me that's just kind of knew that this was not going to turn out the way that we had wanted it to turn out, which was very odd because one of the things that happened was that we were getting such great response from people like leaving the polls for the most part, lots of thumbs up, lots of positive, really positive interactions. And I thought for sure it would be much closer. And a professional psychic and a really, really good one that I'm pretty close to looked at the situation and she said, I think you guys are going to win. It's going to be very, very close, very super close. So, and even when I looked at the astrology for the event, it looked pretty good. The only thing I didn't like about the astrology of the event was at closing time, 7 p.m. when the polls closed, that there was Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node all in the 8th house, which was stuff happening behind the scenes. Now, there was a very unusual delay in the election results. It took 15 hours for the election results to actually get to the Secretary of State. Now, I've done a little bit of research around this, and part of the reasoning around it is that in Harris County, where Houston is Harris County, it was a big election, and they've got a runoff now with their bizarre, weak and incompetent mayor with another, who knows, Houston, you had a chance to at least put some numbers out there for Derrick Broze, and you didn't do it. You didn't do it. You just passed the buck, and which is what normally what happens with the mayoral candidates in these cities, which are by and large democratically run. Okay, they're democratically run, and they've done such a great job of running the cities. Thank you, comrades. You have done a very good job managing our properties in America. The cities now resembling the cities of the former Soviet Union. We're very thankful. Spasiba. Anyway, so there was a delay with the voting. They said it came from Harris County because instead of using electronic voting, that they actually carried the ballots from the precincts to the place where they would count the votes, right? That so supposedly it took longer. I don't know. I'm not buying any of it. You know, and there was a really interesting discussion, kind of going back and forth yesterday on the comment section. And Christine, who's a you know real avid listener, has really strong beliefs about not voting, and that you buy into the system. You admit that you're a slave when you don't vote. And look, I did not vote for a very long period of time. I was on the sidelines. I was, you know, I'm kind of this interesting terminal optimistic cynic, if you can kind of wrap your head around that. And so what happened was I decided to get involved in a local effort here, due to the fact that our friends in San Marcos were actually able to change. They were able to change their water based on the fact that they put in 2 years worth of hard work. They had to sue the city once. They threatened to sue the city a second time, and they won. They beat the city. Okay, and it wasn't because some archonic deity said, "Okay, we need to give the plebes a win." No, the city of San Marcos, up to the end, tried to steal that election, and in fact, they had election observers inside of where they were counting the polls, and then somebody who was not part of the election team or the people that were supposed to be there and counting the votes showed up. They knew that this guy didn't belong there, and they started to eyeball this guy, and then he left. Okay, so there's a very strong chance that they went to hijack that election. Following that, because San Marcos water line is connected to Buda and Kyle, because San Marcos's water was now unfluoridated, Kyle and Buda had their own opportunity to go after their own city government and flip the switch. And Buda made it happen, right? They had their own effort, they had their own drive, they had their own vote, and guess what? Buda won. Now, logic would say that if they were supposed to just give the plebes a win, that San Marcos would have been the win. And Buda, we're going to crush you, right? We're going to crush you. We're going to stick our thumb down and we're going to dash your hope. We're going to crush you. But that wasn't the case. And then Kyle, which was very interesting, the city council and Kyle, instead of going through the hassle and the rigmarole of having to have a vote and all that, the city of Kyle just voted. Yeah, you know, let's just take the fluoride out. That was of their own volition. That was because people in the city council realized that this might actually be a good thing. Portland had a really knockdown, drag out vote on fluoride, and Portland won. So Portland is not fluoridated. However, there are those who think that based on the activity and the antics of Antifa, maybe they should start fluoridating again. That remains to be seen. I don't have a judgment call on that. Obviously, I'm always in the camp of letting people decide what they need to do or what they want to have as part of their experience. And that's why we had a vote. At the end of the day, that's why we had a vote. So I'm just telling you that my reasoning to get involved had to do with the fact that I saw a model and it worked. It worked in those three places. And I don't think it was a gimme. It wasn't a gimme. Okay, those people worked their asses off, and then they had to go to court and threaten to sue the city once and actually sued the city another time. They got their point across and they won. So I want to just kind of wrap this whole thing up and put it to bed, because it's like I invested a lot of time and people invested a lot of money, and we did our best to spend the money wisely. We took out major full page ads in the local newspaper because they wouldn't print our article. So, as you know, many of you know Joan from Austin, who is a biological dentist, wrote a wonderful letter to the editor. And they wouldn't print it because she's not from Fredericksburg. Okay. Even though she's a dentist, even though she is well, she's a dentist and she's from Austin. She's a biological dentist. She's anti-fluoride, anti-mercury, right? The light went off, right? She had the Paul on the road to Damascus moment, right? The Saul Paul moment. So in order for us to get that letter to the editor printed, we spent $1,500 to put out a full page ad in the newspaper. And it was a great full page ad. It listed all the fact-finding studies about the Journal of American Medicine and Pediatrics, which has come out and said that fluoride reduces IQ. Look, we know fluoride is dangerous. It's dangerous, and it's not even the same fluoride that Edward Bernays convinced the United States government and the ADA that they should be putting in their water. Right? It is not sodium fluoride. It is hydrofluorosilicic acid. It is a byproduct of industrial fertilizer waste. And these people in this town who voted to keep the fluoride in can't get it through their fucking heads that this is what they're putting in their water. This is what they're putting. And we even took out a full page ad with the actual printout. We got the printout from a company called Nutrien. Isn't that an ironic name? The company's called Nutrien, and they're basically shipping poison out all across the United States so we can put it in our water supply. Any dose of this hydrofluorosilicic acid that would be exposed in the air and the water would be an environmental hazard. The EPA would rule an environmental hazard. And yet, it's okay to put it in our water just a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. It's not going to harm you. So we had the whole full page printout of this stuff. Levels of arsenic and lead, and the EPA says there is no safe level of arsenic and lead. And still, the people that are I'm sorry, I'm gonna cross some lines here. The people that are fucking brain dead in this town can't figure it out, right? They just can't figure it out because they are order followers and they're order takers and they're subservient, on their knees slaves. That's what they are. There were apparently 800 free thinkers, you know, which is really ironic because this town was founded by free thinkers, theoretically. They came from Germany because they wanted to escape the religious and political dogma of Germany. Well, they came here to find a free land where they could express free thought. And guess what? They become social democrats. And free thought and free thinking is the last thing that these people have on their minds. I tell you that right now. Because if they were truly dedicated to the vision of their founders and the people that started this town, we would have aced this thing and it would have been no problems at all. So I just want to, again, I'm going to get a few things off my chest today. The other thing that I take great issue with was the fact that the newspaper in this town did a full page editorial in support of fluoride. Okay, a full page editorial. Now, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me because this is what the power of the press, even at a local level, has, right? Power of the press. Would have been a more responsible article, would have been a right down the middle, pros and cons. You decide, right? You decide. But no, the publishers of the newspaper in this town who would not print our articles, that would not print our letters to the editor, had the power of their small-time press to do a full-page editorial supporting and promoting fluoridation. Okay, and in my world, it's totally irresponsible. Now, if I had that paper, would I do the same thing? I don't know. That's just not how I'm wired. I'm not wired that way. You know, it must be all my planets on Libra. I would try to be fair, right? I try to be fair here. You know, I try to, you know, hone in on what I think and what I've come to a conclusion around the distillation of some kind of truth that I perceive. Along the way, I may piss a few people off, but that's just the way it goes. So I asked myself, what would I do? I probably would have been a pro and con thing because then people could really decide for themselves. I guess if I was more of a sociopath, I'd do the same fucking thing they did. but you know, my sociopath days are over. I've been redeemed. Thank you, Lord. Anyway, these are some of the things that we encountered here, and some weird stuff, like really weird stuff. Let me give you another example. I didn't talk about this yesterday, but I wanted to give it a day to rest. So if you go on my website, right? Go on my website. Oh, Jasper, he's had a hard time. He was so looking forward to just me being able to open that tap and give him fluoride-free water instead of the bottled water that I buy. It's okay, Jasper. You'll still get good water. So if you go to my website and go to About, robertphoenix.com, you'll go to About, you'll see my picture, and I'm standing next to a woman, attractive woman, and I think it's a good picture. I don't take really good pictures. I like the picture. And the picture came from an event that happened probably about, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. And there's a business right around the corner from my place. And the business is owned by the woman. Her name is Lauren. And she has a cryo spa there. And I think they do some infusions and then, you know, they cut hair. It's actually a pretty cool place, especially for Fredericksburg. Anyway, they had like an open house. So she asked me, because I've done some readings for her. She asked me to present, and I did. And you know, some other people. I was doing some tarot readings and having some fun with people. Anyway, we took a picture, and I thought, man, it's a good picture. I like the picture. I'll put it on my About Who I Am page, right? So I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago. Some guy from the city goes over to her business because she has one of our signs in her window. And this is a guy, I think he's in charge of operations or something like that. And he says, you need to take that sign down. Why? It's her business. He kept harassing her to take the sign down. So there was harassment on a local level for merchants to not support this issue, okay? And so eventually she took the sign down. But here's where it gets really weird. He said to her, by the way, did you know Robert Phoenix has a picture of you on his website? I heard this 2 days ago. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing on my website? What is he doing on my website? Well, he's obviously he's obviously stalking me and trying to find out who I am, what I'm about, blah, 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 right? And he says, he's using you. He's using you. He's using you. He's a demonic cult leader. This is an anti-fluoride cult. And she said, well, there was an event here. I have his picture on my Facebook page. Why couldn't he use this picture? And it was like, wow, what else has been going on? What else has been going on? What else have these little devils known as our public servants been doing? Interesting revelation. I had two great conversations, two really great conversations on the day of the election. One took place at the local precinct right by my place. And I think I might have told the story, but if I did, I'll tell it again, because some of you may have missed yesterday's dreary acceptance of defeat. So I excuse me, I had this conversation with this woman, a young woman. She said she just moved from Houston. She asked me, were you involved in the creation of these signs? I said, yeah, I'm part of this team. And she said, oh, wow, that's so great. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for being involved. And, you know, I just moved up from Houston. I'm an environmental scientist. And not only do we have to be concerned about what's in our water, we have to be concerned about what's in our air. What do you think she was talking about? She was talking about chemtrails. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, they've started spraying again. Have you noticed that? And she said, yeah, they have. I said, yeah, you're right, they have. So, well, why is that? I said, well, because there's a spray cycle that's involved. If you haven't figured out the spray cycle, here's how it works. When fall and winter come around, they take their spraying operation and they move it north of the equator so that people can get sick. during a time where there's less UV light. Pretty simple. As late spring, early summer begins to emerge, where do you think they go? They go south of the equator, and places like Australia, New Zealand, South America. I don't know what's going on with Africa. I've seen chemtrail pictures in Africa anyway. So that's why they're spraying again. It's just part of the cycle, part of the schedule. You know, people will say, oh, Trump stopped the chemtrails. Well, that's bullshit. He hasn't stopped the chemtrails. I'm sorry, they're still there. And some people say, oh, they're different chemtrails. Like, what are they spraying us now with? Vitamin B? Are we getting vitamin cocktails now with the chemtrails? Are they the good chemtrails now? Even if they were doing that stuff, I wouldn't want it. I didn't ask for it. Even if theoretically they were spraying vitamin B and vitamin D and whatever, human growth hormone or whatever kind of, you know, cool shit that we could be taking, I didn't ask for it. That's still my choice. In as much as the local government here is medicating us without our consent, well, the people spoke. Now they can have their fluoride. Part of the process. Okay, it's part of the process. But even if they were like, hey, we're going to put really cool shit in your water, I'd want to vote on that because that's not my choice ultimately. So we had a great conversation about the chemtrails and other stuff. It was great. I'm like, wow, here's a young switched on person. They live here in Fredericksburg. And this is good, really good. This is a good conversation to have. I'm like, I'm feeling hopeful. No matter how the election was going to turn out, after that conversation, I felt hopeful. And then I had a very surprising conversation at the very end of the day, as I was just completely tired and just exhausted, not just from the day, but you've been doing this for 14 months, and every single day I've been working on this, pretty much. And it just came through the big event here in the Hill Country. So I've been working my ass off. So I was really tired. As I went back to my truck, I came across this family walking through the town square. They were a Latino family, right? Hispanic. These are the people theoretically that they're putting the fluoride in the water for. And they were 5 strong and a husband and a wife. And the husband says, did we win, sir? Sir, did we win? I was like, whoa, we? You're on our team? I'm like, I don't know. Hope so. Feels like it could be really close. And he said to me, we need to get this stuff out of our water. Wow. So to me, there's nothing by chance, or there's no accidents. There are no accidents. I had a conversation with somebody who was, white, bright, and switched on, right? And she was an environmental scientist, and she knew the score. And at the end of the day, I had a conversation with a Latino Hispanic family that was just as bright and switched on as she was. Very, very different, coming from very, very different backgrounds and very, very kind of different, I would probably technical or vocational applications. So I actually know what this woman does. I can't say it on the air because it would probably indict her on some level, just in terms of the bigger picture. And I said to myself, and I've thought about this over the last 24 hours, that this is the future of Fredericksburg. It's the future of Fredericksburg. And it might be the future of America in some ways. That we have a group of people that are waking up, and it's not just one group of people. It's not just one group of people. People are waking up. They are. They are. There is a family that typically, you would think, oh, well, they're just going to check that box because, somebody who has promised them entitlements told them to vote this way. Well, that's bullshit, because these people are starting to think for themselves. The groups are starting to think for themselves and separate themselves. That's why they've got to bring new groups of people in all the time, because through this process of assimilation, people are waking up. And so they've got to bring new groups in who are probably more asleep and more dependent than the previous groups that they've shipped in. And this is the way the game is working now. Let's see. All right, here we go. Somebody just sent me a link. Business proposition. I'm always open for business propositions. I'm good for a good business proposition. Anyway, this was a very interesting sort of duo of conversations that I had. And I thought to myself, this is not over by any stretch. And what's going to happen here in this place is that the leadership is going to leave and pass away. You know, they're going to pass, they're old. You look at the city council, they're all 60 plus. There's nobody under 60 on that city council. And they're going to go away. And there's a chance that their children will probably, because that's the way this thing works out here, that their children will wind up on the city council, but there's no guarantee that the children will hold the same values that their parents did, right? Unless they're Masons, in which case they might. So I feel actually very optimistic 48 hours or 24 hours after the vote, 48 hours after people did vote. I feel optimistic, and I feel really positive about where we are and how far things have come and how many people that I actually was able to connect with in this place that were alive and switched on and awake. You know, we have this functional medicine doctor here. She's an MD, right? And she came out swinging, man. She came out swinging for our side. And the dentist desperately tried to recruit her because they knew that if they could get somebody from the alternative world, that it would really just, you know, seal their deal. But they couldn't. They couldn't. And then she actually sent them information that they, of course, probably had no desire to look at all. This vote is on them, and it's on their souls, because what's happening is that we're being poisoned, and they are advocates. They're advocates of poisoning the populace. That's what it comes to at the end of the day. They're advocates of that, and they'll have to answer to that at some point in time, no matter what their rational, big brain, I'm a god of science, liberal, progressive entreaties dictate to them, no matter what high moral ground from their secular humanist scientific perspective defines for them, they're going to have to answer to this. They're impacting lives. And they think they're impacting lives for the betterment, for the good of those lives. They'll find out one day that they're terribly wrong. And I do believe that there'll be a time in the future where fluoride and the fluoridation of water will be eliminated across the nation. That's my proclamation. It will be eliminated. In which case, all these other people, the ADA and all these dentists are going to have to cry like, you know, the ones that are very sniveling little bitches. They're going to have to live with it. It's coming. It's coming. The suits are going to come. It happened. It happened with Roundup, right? It happened with Roundup, and they know that you know, that they still use, you know, kind of Roundup variations, or they change a few molecules here and there, whatever. It's what they do. Time is going to come, and there's going to be a new generation that's going to come in, and they're going to have to deal with this new generation, some of whom are the millennials. There are some switched on millennials. And not all millennials are snowflakes. I think it's a grossly unfair characterization and generalization of a lot of millennials. I think there are tendencies in that group that trend towards that, but I've met a lot of very independent, really switched on and zoomed in millennials. Heather, Astrology with Heather, is a great example. Nobody's going to tell that girl what to think or what to do. She's very independent thinking, and she's aware and she's awake. So it's not just a slam dunk with all the millennials. And then coming up from behind the millennials, man, this generation, the Saggers, the Pluto and Sag kids, they've got a new nickname now. They're called the Zoomers. They have a new nickname. It's like the Zoomers are taking on the Boomers, right? Z for Generation Z. This is the Pluto and Sag kids. And there was a really interesting, I don't know if you've been following this, but this guy, Charlie Kirk, oh my God. Hold on a second. Let's put this back in. Charlie Kirk has this, he has this organization called Culture Wars, The Turning Point. Well, where do you think they got culture wars from? They stole it from E. Michael Jones. They stole it from E. Michael Jones. So Turning Point is this, oh, right, the dark intellectual web. Charlie Kirk is a member of the dark intellectual web. Ooh, he's smart. Anyway, he's part of this group, Ben Shapiro and all these other fucking traitors is really what they are. Anyway, Charlie Kirk has been taking this group around the country, getting into college campuses and talking about, oh, isn't it great to be a Republican and a conservative? Oh, isn't your student debt great? Oh, and let me bring up this guy named Jeff Smith. Oh, he's black and he's queer and he's a former vet. Oh, he's everything that you'd hope for because we support LGBTQ rights, yay, and all this bullshit, right? So when this guy came to you, what was it? Was it Notre Dame? Was it Notre Dame or it was in South Bend or right around that area? I think it might have been Notre Dame. Anyway, he brings Turning Point to this college campus. And this guy, Christian Fuentes, who is a Zoomer, starts hitting him with missiles about stuff like, why do we give so much aid to Israel? We give more aid to Israel than any other country in the world combined. And those countries are impoverished. They're below the poverty line. Why do we give them all this money? And why do we give money to a country that blew up the USS Liberty? And then Charlie Kirk has to go on the defensive. And he's like, oh, keep that anti-Semitic crap out of here. And it's true. It's true. It's what happened. Dean Rusk, who was the Secretary of State at that time, even admitted it's true. It's true. Israel shot the USS Liberty. That's what happened. And nothing has ever really come about. Anyway, he brings this, and then Charlie Kirk has to go on the defensive. And it's really interesting to watch the reaction in the crowd. And then they have all these people that are lined up to take this guy and his sidekick Toady, Jeff Smith, the cool queer, Army vet, person of color. By the way, Tulsi Gabbard refers to herself as a woman of color. Really? What color are you? What color are you? I looked at your father. Your father is as white as I am. Gabbard. Was your mother like, Polynesian or something? Perhaps. Now she's a woman of color. Look, she was defending herself on The View. I am a woman of color. Why does it matter? Is it supposed to legitimize you, Tulsi? Really? That's weak. I got to say this about Tulsi Gabbard. I like the fact she took Kamala Harris on. I wouldn't trust Tulsi Gabbard at all. I think Tulsi Gabbard is she's a plant. I think she's a cutout, and I think she's being positioned to become president of the United States. Not this time. The next election, Tulsi Gabbard, there'll probably be Tulsi Gabbard's time. Okay, during that election, Saturn will be in Aquarius. Am I right? It'll be 4 years from now. It'll be at the end of Aquarius, beginning of Pisces. I don't trust. I think Tulsi Gabbard voted to impeach Trump. Okay, she's not an independent thinker. She likes to play the patriot card. I love this country card. Yeah, great, cool, fantastic. Why don't you really show us your real creds here, Tulsi? Show us your real creds. She's talking about 9/11. Well, why don't you go all the way? Go all the way with 9/11. Stop poking around. Fucking know who did 9/11. Everybody knows who did 9/11. Get out and let's see what you got. What about the Patriot Act? Where do you stand with the Patriot Act? Somebody needs to ask her that. Would she rescind the Patriot Act? That's where you'll find out where everybody stands. Nobody will rescind the Patriot Act. If I was president, executive order. Cancel that thing. Let's get back to the Constitution. That's why we have such problems. Constitution was abrogated during the time of the Patriot Act. Anyway, I'm sort of drifting off course a little bit here. But the Zoomers, man, this is what Fredericksburg and the rest of the United States of America and the world are going to have to deal with, these Pluto and Sag kids, which is why they want to get into schools and torque their brains about sexual identity and family and sexual practices, and they want to vaccinate them up the yin yang, get them on this massive schedule of vaccines. They also want to hit them with the Doom program so that they won't populate, they won't marry, they won't have kids. You see these kids taking these vows to not have kids, right? That's why they promote Greta Thunberg, who's their generation, Generation Z, so that they can all relate to her and feel terrified and run around like life is going to end, life is over. It's just another version of apocalyptic dystopian programming. I lived through that when I was a kid in the 70s. That's all I saw. That's all I was interested in. I was like so tuned in to dystopian programming. Those were my favorite shows. My favorite shows, my favorite movies, my favorite comic books. It was all about dystopian programming. And I often saw myself as a person who was living through those times when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old. And we're kind of there, but it's a program, just like zero population was a program. That was happening during the late 60s and early 70s. There was no mistake, right? No mistake. Now, some of that actually is also predictive programming. Hello, Soylent Green. But it was on point. Oh, there's gonna be a terrible population program. Terrible. Too many people. There was a Star Trek episode devoted to that. And creepy. It was a creepy episode where they find themselves on a replica of the Enterprise, and they're being observed by all these people. And when the glass is kind of removed, where it's like the window is revealed, you see all these faces pressed up against the window, watching this hermetically sealed environment, where of course the humans were often the guinea pig in many Star Trek episodes. In this case, it was par for the course. Didn't deviate from the script. So we saw it in so many places. There was actually a movie called ZPG, Zero Population Growth. So you have that, and then you have the dystopian kind of programming going on. And guess what? Population rates fall off. I was an only child. What happened? Only child as my progeny. Gee, wonder where I got that from. I'll take some responsibility for it, my own life, my own way. But so there's a lot of programming that's been going on for a very long period of time, and they're ramping it up again because this generation wants to think for themselves. This generation wants to think for themselves. They don't want people telling them what to think or what to do. And I think at some point, even Greta Thunberg will have her epiphany. And when she does, unless she's so programmed and whacked out that she can't even recognize it, her usefulness will be terminated. They won't need her anymore, and you won't hear about Greta Thunberg for a very, very long time. That's my prediction. And so this is what Fredericksburg, the United States, and the world is facing. You're facing a generation that is going to wake up, and they do not like being told what to do. They don't. And so what they're doing is doing everything in their power to neuter, to chemically castrate, to abolish and detonate the family. They're doing everything in their power so this group of children don't wake up, get together, hang out, impregnate and populate and change the culture. They don't want that. They don't want it. That's why we're seeing this full court press around transgenderism. They want to end the story. They want to end the procreative story. And from this point forward, they want to be able to rule over people that are confused, fucked up, have no family ties, and are unable to procreate and actually raise a biological family. That is their goal, and that is the end game. And I'm sure fluoride plays no small part in that. I still can't get over that guy going to my webpage, checking me out. You had a picture on picture of you on his website. He's using you. He's using you. Right. I'd love to sit in on some of those meetings. Love to sit on some of those meetings and see who's using who. Yeah. Get the real story. Get the real story. All right, let me check in with you guys. See where you're at. Tulsi is blue with envy. Let's see. My 9-year-old son is the same way. Good. Barney Miller was a Hughes disclosure program. You're talking about the episode where the guy who runs in and starts talking about this worldwide conspiracy. You know who that guy is? Jeffrey Tambor. Jeffrey Tambor, I believe, has been shown to be in the pedo ring, right? So Jeffrey Tambor is this deeply compromised individual. He was certainly kind of outed in this weird kind of Me Too thing. So it's an interesting kind of placement of a person inside of the Barney Miller episode. I know the one you're talking about. Look up Jeffrey Tambor. What else do we have going on here? Click the thumbs up, people. Yeah, thumbs up. You know what? You know what else here? Okay, listen. I need some subscribers on this channel. I need subscribers. I need to get over 1,000 subscribers. You know why? Because YouTube will not allow me to stream from my phone unless I have 1,000 subscribers. Now, on my other channel, the 11th House channel, I got 5,000 subscribers. YouTube doesn't recognize that. So please, I need subscriptions. Subscribe, just so I can do the stream. Get me over that 1,000 hump, so I can actually do a live stream on this phone. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you've subscribed and maybe you've fallen off, try to subscribe again. Hit the bell. A lot of times people aren't notified of the show. So that's my talking point to you. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. I wonder if I think he'd been in touch with you about something. Let's see, wasn't he on Gary Shandling show? Yes, he was. Yes. Robert, don't let the alligators bite you. Don't let the alligators bite me. Okay. That's wisdom. That's wisdom. I think we have our friend back. I think it's the hat that brought our friend back. Let's see. Sticky, please post the name. Don't know who's referencing me. Let's see. What else we have here? You go back. Voted for impeachment. Because nowadays they'll use the race card. When we were children, you never use that. We had to be authentic and actually work for it. Ask for flying Dubai. I'm colorful and occasionally use colorful language. Does that count? Yes, it does count. Let's see. I heard your name on podcast. Okay, it was all from April. You got a shout out as a wonderful psychic. There we go. You got a wonderful psychic here. Maury says, sad to say, but that's the way it is done, Uncle Glenn. Yes, the occasional oddball slips through, but yes. Why do we arm Ukrainians to kill the Ukrainians? Yeah, it's a good question. Why do we do that? So Ukraine, very interesting. They've gone through like what, 5 or 6 revolutions. 5 or 6 revolutions, and the latest one obviously had to do with what's her name? Victoria. Victoria, I'm spacing out. I can see her face. Kagan, Victoria Kagan, not Kagan. Yeah, Kagan, and Robert Kagan, right? Newland. Kagan's the other one, who's a Supreme Court judge. Newland. Yeah, Victoria Nuland ran the Ukrainian revolution, right from the White House, the neocon job, using our money, our taxpayers' dollars, all secret, all color revolutionary bullshit. That's what happened with Ukraine. Absolutely. Got a new subscriber. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's get over 1,000. I'm not asking for a lot. Let's get 1,000 so I can start to stream live on the old cell phone here. Okay. You know, I was going to talk about this thing in Mexico. Have you guys been following this? There's some weird shit. This convoy where the like 9 women and children were killed down in Mexico. So I went down that rabbit hole. Wow. Wow. Interesting rabbit hole. very interesting rabbit hole. So if you don't know what's happened, there were supposedly I don't think we can trust anything anymore in the news. I really don't. I really, really don't. Even if it somehow coheres to like our version of reality, I think we have to be really, really on point, and we really have to have our best filters out now. Because I went down that rabbit hole in the last 24 hours with this whole LeBaron family thing down in Mexico. And hold on one second. This LeBaron family thing. And as I began to kind of peel the layers away, there was some interesting observations that the survivors of that drive-by, that cartel drive-by, did not show the requisite kinds of signs of grief or shock. That there were some very unusual kinds of things like people skipping and dancing and kind of smiling. What is that about, right? I mean, we ascribe that stuff to the false flags that happen in places like I don't know, Parkland or Newtown. But this is different. The same kind of weird after effect. So just file that away for just a moment. Now that said, it's a very bizarre rabbit hole because this LeBaron family had moved to Mexico back in the late 1950s and then 1924-25 established a breakaway colony from the Mormon colony in Utah because they wanted to practice polygamy. And so there were two breakaway Mormon colonies, Colonia Juarez, right? And there's another one in the LeBaron family. This thing is a trip, man. It's a total trip. So there were two brothers that took over from the father, who I went to this gal's website. She's one of the daughters of the LeBaron family. And the grandfather was a breakaway guy. He was a prophet, of course, polygamy. And he had two sons, and one of which he anointed to become the new, prophet. And then the other son who was not anointed. And the two of these sons worked side by side for a while to, promote and grow their community. Now, I'm sure they were involved in some really, really sketchy activities and probably had a lot of money that they were funneling through various businesses, real and or illicit. And what happened was that one of the brothers decided that he was going to become rich and powerful and take the money and use it to have great cars and nice clothes and essentially keep his side of the colony impoverished. And then what he eventually does is he winds up murdering his brother. I think it's Avril LeBaron. So this guy is a nasty dude, and he creates this kind of new covenant called the Blood Atonement. And the Blood Atonement is something that he had a vision. These people get visions after praying and fasting. So he had a vision of the Blood Atonement. And then if you deviated from his law and his codification of the Mormon faith, the LDS, well, you were terminated. It's called the Blood Atonement. So this guy started to kill essentially all of his rivals. It was like a gang. It's like a gang. These people are like a gang. So there was like a series of gangland slayings inside of this kind of Mormon breakaway community. Killed his own brother, and he hired people to do it, and they didn't get him for it. They eventually figured it out. He eventually was arrested for all these murders. It took him like 7 years. In the meantime, this guy was on, he was on the loose, right, for 7 years, creating murder and mayhem. So there's other sides to the story now with this. Supposedly, it cannot be confirmed here, but supposedly this is a group that's related to Mitt Romney. And Mitt Romney has a pretty significant connection to illicit activities and trade that have helped him become extremely wealthy and very, very rich, not just the pillaging and pilfering of companies that he's done over the last 30 years, where he goes in and buys companies up, sells off their assets, picks the company to the bone and discards everything. Worst form of capitalism that there is. No, he's been involved in some other things as well, right? So there's a link theoretically to this group and Mitt Romney. Now here's the kicker. There also appears to be a link between this group and NXIVM. Remember, NXIVM had very strong ties with Mexico because they were bringing young women up from Mexico in order to work in the homes of these NXIVM clients. And of course, Keith Raniere was doing everything in his power to sleep with them and do whatever he did. I mean, what a creep. I mean, that guy is a total creep. Anyway, so there's some very interesting potential ties with NXIVM here. So what's really going on? Are they basically going to clean up this operation with this breakaway LDS group, which has a long track record of murder in the family, right? And who knows what else were they working side by side with the cartels? I mean, look, you can't exist in a place like Juarez, which is cartel heavy, unless you're doing some kind of business with them, because they'll take you out. So I'm sure on the Q tip, they'll spin some story like, oh, wow, this is happening and this is happening, this is happening. Maybe, I don't know. I never see these things happen. I never see the results of these things. So we have to kind of go by whatever it is we're being told, right? Not me. Anyway, so you'll hear that. Or what are they really doing, right? Is Allison Mack singing like a bird, and now they're going to go in and they're going to clean that up? Are they going to clean that situation up now so that it doesn't exist, that there's no trail, there's no people that they can bring in and go to the next level with it? It's a very unusual, very curious event that just took place. And I'm just sharing with you, don't take it at face value. If you're into it, you have some time, do a little research. I did some. It's a breakaway LDS cult with a history of compromise and murder. And then there are supposed links with NXIVM there as well. Okay. So there's things going on. And if you feel like it, put your light on your hat, put your cave hat on, right? Your coal miner hat on, and jump into that rabbit hole if you have time. All right, let's see what else we have here. What else? Cyanide mouthwash for Ali. George Romney was his name. He's the guy who put tanks on the streets of Detroit. Yes, George Romney. He also was the owner of American Motors. American Motors was his automobile company. Created some of the shittiest cars of all time. Really bad cars, with the exception of one. There's one car that American Motors got right. That was the AMX. The AMX is a badass car. I'd love to have an AMX. But we're talking Gremlin, Pacer, right? The Eagle was kind of interesting. It was an all-wheel drive car. That was kind of interesting. Odd looking. Interesting, though. I think they were connected to Jeep as well. And then Jeep spun off. Right? Yeah, George Romney was Mitt Romney's father. I live in the heart of Mormon land. Lots of LDS in my family, historical dudes too. All Masonic to the bone. Well, it's because Joseph Smith stole most of his um, craft and most of the tenets from Mormonism from the Freemasons. You know, I did a deep dive into Joseph Smith a while ago, and you know, there was this whole thing called the Great Awakening. It was happening during the time he was a young man. I believe it was what, the early 1800s. We're talking about 1823, 1824, 1825, right around there. It was all on the East Coast of the United States, obviously, because that's where we were populated, right? The East Coast of the United States. And that was the time of the revival. The revival circuit started during that time. And so the whole idea with the Great Awakening, you know, came this idea that you could become born again. Born again. So let's say you were baptized and you went through the baptism and Christ died for your sins, and you just had to follow the good book, live by the Ten Commandments, do what you needed to do. No, they had to rebrand everything, and the rebranding was being born again. That's where the term comes from, to be born again, and it comes out of the Great Awakening in the early 1800s with the revival circuit. So these revivals would come into town and be hooping and hollering and, holy water and born again, Holy Ghost in the name of Jesus. So you're 2 times, right? Born again. This is where Joseph Smith comes out of, that period of time. And it informs his psychology. And then he's also connected, I believe, is it the Iroquois? I think he's connected to the Iroquois, that there's the Iroquois that he was sort of kind of gleaning things from. There's this kind of, this connection with this obsidian mirror that supposedly he gazed into to gain his prophecy. It's a big deal, right? I believe that comes out of this connection with the Iroquois and kind of this naturalism, right? This kind of magical naturalism. And then he begins to study Freemasonry. And then the whole idea ultimately with Mormonism is that you get to become a god of your own planet. That's what happens. You become your own planetary god. And it's the same thing with Freemasonry. You get to become a god. And once you get to a certain level, you supersede all these other peons and humans who weren't able or intelligent enough or smart enough or wise enough or powerful enough to understand all the symbols and the signs, so that you could advance along the way. Oh, look at me, I've risen. I'm the cream of the crop. I've risen to the top. I got my own fucking planet now. That's how it works with Mormonism. So Joseph Smith pilfered a lot of the Freemasonic ideas, and he paid for it. He paid for it. He got cut in two in Illinois. You look into the life of Joseph Smith, it is a very controversial life, extremely controversial. And he had to move again and again and again and again, and eventually wound up going to Utah. They tried to settle in Illinois and in Missouri, and they were going back and forth between the Missouri line and the Illinois line. One state would embrace him, the other state would kick him out, him and Brigham Young. And then, of course, he's the one that introduces the idea of polygamy. That's a Joseph Smith thing. And eventually, the United States of America said, no, this is not going to fly here. You're not going to be able to have your polygamous activities. And so they were essentially, it was either you're going to lose your tax exempt status, or either you give up polygamy or you're going to lose your tax exempt status. And that's what happened. So they voted polygamy down. Of course, there's a lot of secret polygamists anyway. We all know that. The Warren Jeffs of the world. But then there's this breakaway faction that goes to Mexico so they could be the renegades. And that's what we're dealing with now, and potentially the relationship with Keith Raniere and NXIVM. And anyway, just wanted to give you a little backstory of Mr. Joseph Smith. All right, where else are we? Joseph Smith creates a religion all around his. Absolutely, Natasha is absolutely right. Absolutely right. He just like, okay, I have a vision. I had a vision. This is what God told me. So now you've got to get on your knees and, put your face between my legs. That's what God told me. And he and Brigham Young, man, they were notorious. They were just notorious womanizers. Not I mean, are you surprised? But you're right, Natasha. If there was something that he wanted to experience or create, experience, he just built it into his religion. That's what he did. My best friend growing up was a descendant of Brigham Young. I think there are a lot of them. Steve Young, who's a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, is Brigham Young's great grandson. Really weird. I used to do tarot readings outside of this art gallery in San Francisco. And the guys that ran the gallery were really nice family. They were Italian, but somehow they were Mormons. I don't think I've ever met Italian Mormons before. Anyway, they were very cool because they let me do tarot readings out in front of their gallery. And nobody else has let me do that. It was a great summer. Anyway, one of the son of the owner of the gallery, had the inside skinny on Steve Young. And let's just say Steve Young was living a bit of a lie, as they say. What else do we have here? So weird. I found out my doctor, dentist, and optometrist are all Mormons. Yikes. The Victorian age has these odd parallel developments of all Christian movements together with the ratification of various sports disciplines. That's a very interesting, that's an interesting observation. Very interesting observation. One that should have a little more attention paid to it. What else? My best friend growing up was a descendant of Brigham. Okay, we talked about that. Haha, who knew about the underwear seeming holy? We call them Jesus jammies. That's funny. I got into a fight with a Mormon kid one time. That was an interesting experience. Very interesting experience. I've written about this story before. I actually had it published in a book on Pluto, the series of short tales on Pluto. So I think it's the only thing I've had published in a book. Anyway, story goes like this, and I'll round off here and get on with the day because I've been talking a lot today. Anyway, story goes like this. I'm in 5th grade, and there's this kid who wants to fight me. And I got into fights and stuff. I was not a barroom brawler. I've got Mars and Cancer. Okay, I'm much better at defending myself than being an attacker or an aggressor. That's the way Mars and Cancer is. So this kid wants to fight me, and full disclosure, I ditched him. I avoided him. I didn't want to fight. He wanted to fight me. And he went to my door where my father was at home. My father had a little workshop in this room. My father was a jeweler, kind of an amateur jeweler. Kid knocks on the door and he says, "Oh, hi, can I help you?" "Yeah, I'm here to fight your son." And he's like, "Oh, really? Did he know that you were supposed to fight him?" "Yeah, I called him out." "Okay, well, I'll tell him you stopped by." So I get home. I don't know what I did. I fucked around. And I go home. It says, my dad says, were you supposed to fight this kid today? I said, yeah. And he said, well, why didn't you fight him? I said, I don't know. I didn't really feel like it. He says, so I wasn't into it. He says, okay, well, I'll tell you what, you're gonna have to deal with him. So here's what you do. You tell him you're gonna fight him in 2 weeks. Tell him you meet him on Saturday. Here's the date. I said, okay. So I walked up to him the next day at school. I said, hey, man, sorry about, missing the fight yesterday, but would still like to fight you if you're cool with that. Oh, yeah. So let's meet in 2 weeks. I'll meet you at your house. We'll fight. How's that? Okay. So my father was a big time fighter. Anyway, for the next 2 weeks, he trained me on the big bag, speed bag. I was doing jump rope. I was doing crossovers. So he Rockied me out, man. For 2 weeks, he Rockied me out. So Saturday rolls around. Remember, this kid's a Mormon. I'm just telling you because he's a Mormon. Saturday rolls around, and he lived in a cul-de-sac. This is a kid I knew. I used to play football with him and his brothers. He had 2 other brothers. So I knock at his door. His mother answers the door. And she says, "Oh, you must be here to fight David." I'm like, "Yep, I'm here to fight David." "Okay, he'll be right out." So she lets him out the door. Okay. Now, her and her two sons are watching from windows in their place while me and her son are getting ready to duke it out in the cul-de-sac. So we get out there and he starts to fight me, and I'm like making this kid look silly, just making him, he's missing, blocking his punches, hitting him every now and then, popping him, and he's just losing it. He's losing it. And he's like in this rage. And all of a sudden he decides he's going to kick me. At that point, mom's like, "Fight's over." So then she comes out and she stops the fight. And his brother runs out and he hits me in the stomach. And she looks at me and she says, "Your father was coaching you on how to fight, wasn't he? Didn't he?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But he also told me how to make friends afterwards too. I got no hard feelings with David. If he wants to shake my hand, I'll shake his hand. We can still be friends." And that blew his mind. There's somebody from Fredericksburg is calling me. The Fredericksburg call. Anyway. Interesting story. They moved shortly thereafter. It was great. It was great for my self-esteem, great for my bonding with my father, and I taught that shit a little lesson. And apparently his brother wound up growing up to become a sportscaster in someplace like what was that city? Tacoma or Spokane. Became a sportscaster in Spokane. And I whooped his little brother's ass. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Yeah, it's a good story, right? I'm telling you, man. See, this is what fathers are for. This is what dads are for. Help their kids so their kids don't wind up taking shit. And I was just defending myself. That's all I was doing. I was defending my honor. He understood that, being a Leo that he was. Let's see. Hey, here's old Fifth Wall. What's going on, Fifth Wall? All right, I'll leave you with that story. It's a good story. It's a good story. So I'm going to be taking a bit of a break here from the show. I'll be doing Sunday night, Astro Live on Sunday. I'll be taking a bit of a break. Next week, I'm actually going to be traveling again. And I just need to chill out and relax. I'm going to be working on some website stuff, doing some readings. I'm not fully unplugging here. I also want to do some revamping. So the next time you see me, let's just see what we got here. Voicemail. Who's this? Who's the voicemail from? Anything from Fredericksburg, I got to pay attention to. I'm going to be launching a Patreon. That's part of what I'm going to be working on. I got a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be taking a bit of a break, just kind of recouping my energies because it's been very intense on a lot of different fronts. So I'm thinking maybe the following week. It's Mercury retrograde. Mercury's in my 12th house. And I gotta just take a little bit of downtime, but I will be on Sunday night, Astro Live. I'm going to be talking about the Mercury transit, which is a big transit, right? Mercury transit across the sun retrograde on 11/11. So we'll talk about that. In the meantime, have yourself a great day. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for joining with me in today's show and kind of wrapping up the experience in Fredericksburg with the election and the fluoride vote, the anti-fluoride vote. Take good care. Do svidaniya.